Welcome to ForeFlight Fundamentals. My name is Ryan McBride. I lead the product design team at ForeFlight. This course is going to be a basic walkthrough of choosing an iPad and navigating through all the core areas of ForeFlight Mobile. If you're interested in a more advanced course, check out ForeFlight Power Users at foreflight.com/videos. ForeFlight was founded in 2007. We pride ourselves on building the most elegant, high-performing apps in aviation, and we also pride ourselves on what we call the fanatical pilot support team. Everyone on the support team at ForeFlight is an instrument-rated pilot, most are CFIs, and all of them are ForeFlight experts. We're proud to say we've been the #1 selling aviation app since 2010. Let's talk about the iPad. Whether you're getting your first iPad or are looking to upgrade your existing iPad, there's a few short recommendations we make. There are a variety of different screen sizes of iPad available, from the iPad mini at the smallest size to the iPad Pro at the largest size. ForeFlight Mobile works exactly the same on every screen size of iPad, so whatever screen size you choose should be totally up to you. For example, I fly a Cessna 172, and so I prefer the iPad mini because it's most comfortable on my knee in that aircraft. But whatever screen size you choose, we do recommend getting the Wi-Fi plus cellular version. Every iPad comes in two versions, Wi-Fi only or Wi-Fi plus cellular. The reason we recommend Wi-Fi plus cellular is because only the cellular model has a GPS built in. We also recommend at a minimum of the 32 gigabyte size. The reason we say 32 gigabytes is you could download all of the data that ForeFlight has available and it'll all fit comfortably on the 32 gigabyte size iPad. For more tips on what iPad is best for you, check out our buying guide at foreflight.com/buying guide. So let's talk about ForeFlight Mobile. ForeFlight Mobile has a huge amount of information available. Airport information, maps, plates, documents, weather imagery, filing and briefing, Scratchpad, which is a tool that allows you to take notes on your iPad screen, and a whole lot more. And we're going to walk through all of these features today. If you haven't yet downloaded ForeFlight, you need to get the app onto your iPad by going to the App Store. When you open up the App Store app on your iPad, you can search for ForeFlight in the search box. And when you hit enter on your keyboard, the ForeFlight Mobile EFB product page will be displayed. Hit the blue cloud icon to download the app to your device. Once you've downloaded ForeFlight to your device and you open it up for the first time, the view will look like this. This is the airports view. It's the default view for new installations of ForeFlight. At the bottom of the screen are a series of buttons. We call these buttons tabs, and altogether we call it the tab bar. Today we're going to work left to right across each of these tabs. The furthermost left tab is airports, so we'll start there. When you first open up the airports view, it will look like this. At the top of the screen is a summary section. If you want to pull up airport information for any airport, all you need to do is type the airport identifier into the search box and hit enter on your keyboard. So for example, if I was looking for airport information for Oshkosh, I would type KOSH into the search box, hit enter on my keyboard, and the view is refreshed with Oshkosh airport information. Now there are two areas of the airport view. There's the top area, which has overview information about the airport, and the bottom view, which has tabs which allow you to dive deeper into information about this airport. Let's start with the top view. You can see a thumbnail diagram of every airport, its identifier, its name, city, state, and country, its latitude and longitude, sunrise and sunset times. Then we call out the flight category based on the current METAR, VFR, marginal VFR, IFR, or low IFR. Beneath that, field elevation, pattern altitude, any fuel or procedures that are available for this airport, and then common frequencies. Beneath the overview section are a series of tabs running across the center of the screen, which allow you to dive deeper into information about any category. The furthermost left tab is frequencies. You can see in this view there are two columns. The left column, which is categories of frequencies, and the right column, which displays all the frequencies in any given category. Each of the views for all the tabs on the airport view are laid out in this same two-column style. So if I wanted to, for example, look up ground frequencies for Oshkosh, I would tap the ground cell, and on the right-hand column I would see all of the ground frequencies for Oshkosh. The next tab over is weather. There's a variety of textual weather products that are available on the airports page. The first is the METAR. You can see we've color-coded the current METAR based on what conditions are being reported. In this case, VFR conditions at Oshkosh. Beneath the raw METAR, we've also translated it for you. In the top right-hand corner is a timestamp, which shows you how old that METAR is. Directly underneath the METAR is the terminal forecast. If the airport you're looking at does not have a terminal forecast, we'll show you the nearest terminal forecast. In this case, you can see ForeFlight has color-coded each of the forecast blocks for the terminal forecast based on what conditions are being forecast. We also translate each of those blocks directly beneath the raw text. There are a variety of other textual weather products available on this view, for example MOS, which stands for Model Output Statistics, and also Winds Aloft, which shows you forecast wind speed, direction, and temperature from surface elevation all the way up to 60,000 feet above any airport. For more information on these weather products, check out our guide at foreflight.com/help, or continue with the next course, ForeFlight Power Users, at foreflight.com/videos. The next tab over is Runways. The Runways view shows you everything you'd expect to find in the airport facility directory, but we've added in a few smart features which make looking at this information a little more useful. In this case, you can see I'm looking at runways 05 and 23. Based on the runway direction and also the current METAR, ForeFlight actually automatically shows you the wind components for every runway. In this case, for runway 5, we can see we have a 7-knot crosswind component and a 5-knot headwind component. The Procedures tab is where we can pull up any procedure for any airport. Under the Procedures tab, there are a variety of different categories. The Airport category contains surface diagrams. Departures, arrivals, and approaches follow. Under the Airport category, I can tap on any one of these airport diagrams, for example the first one, to view it in full screen. There's a couple things on this view that are important to note. The first is, you'll see a blue box around an outside portion of the procedure. This is the portion of the procedure that is geo-referenced. If you're a ForeFlight Pro, Pro Plus, or Performance Plus subscriber, you have geo-referenced procedures in ForeFlight Mobile. This allows you, assuming you have a GPS source connected, to see your aircraft position directly on top of a procedure. You can see my aircraft position here on the runway. Directly underneath Airport Diagram is ForeFlight Diagram. There are many airports that don't have official airport diagrams, so ForeFlight has begun creating our own custom diagrams that are already geo-referenced for customers. For example, here's a view of the airport diagram that ForeFlight has created specifically for Oshkosh Airport. You can browse through departures, arrivals, and approaches as well. In this case, if I wanted to pull up an approach, I would select the approach category and select the name of the approach that I want to view. ForeFlight opens up that approach in full screen. You can see only a portion of the approach is geo-referenced. This is denoted by the blue box. I can also see my aircraft position directly on top of that approach as I fly it. The next tab over is NOTAMs. NOTAMs are organized by category: Airport, Obstacle, TFR, and ARTSI. They're also organized by time. So under the Airport NOTAM section, I can see airport NOTAMs that are relevant to me today. I can see what their effective and updated times are, and we've also highlighted in red important aspects of each NOTAM. The next tab is useful if you're flying into an airport that you're not familiar with and are interested in seeing what kind of hotels, restaurants, taxi services, and car rental services are available. If you open up this view on an iPhone, you can actually tap on any one of these businesses, and ForeFlight will call the business automatically for you on your phone. The raw airport facility directory page is always included for pilots who prefer to reference that. The last thing I want to talk about on the airports view is the FBO view, which is in the top right-hand corner. If I tap on the FBOs button, ForeFlight shows me all the businesses at this airport: FBOs, maintenance and services, rental and flight schools. I can tap on any one of these to get information about them, see where they're located, what their operating hours are, if they have fuel, what the prices are, their frequency, phone number, email, website. Under the comments section, I can actually see comments that other ForeFlight customers have left about this business and leave my own comments as well. The next core area of the application is Maps. This is where most ForeFlight customers will spend most of their time in the application. The Maps tab is one to the right of the Airports tab along the bottom of the screen. When you first open up the Maps tab, you'll see something that looks like this. All maps in ForeFlight are projected onto a 3D representation of the planet, and this representation is fully interactive. So for example, I can take my finger and I can swipe it left to right across the screen to pan around. I can also take two fingers, place them close together on the screen, and spread them out on the screen. We call this pinch to zoom, and when I do that, the map is enlarged and I can zoom into any area to get greater detail. At the top left-hand corner of the screen on the Maps view is a big button we call the Layer Selector. The Layer Selector is where I select a different type of map that I want to view or a map layer that I want to view. If I tap the button, I get a view that looks like this. There are two columns. The left column is where I select maps and charts, and the right column is where I select map layers, which are pieces of information that can be rendered on top of any map to give me a better idea of what's going on in any given area. If I was flying VFR, I might select the VFR sectional, and my map that I was looking at prior is now replaced with a VFR sectional. It's worth noting that all of these maps continue to be interactive regardless of what type of map you're looking at. So I can pinch to zoom back out and I can see ForeFlight has stitched together all of the VFR sectionals for the entire United States into one map, and I can easily pinch to zoom into any area I'm interested in looking at. If I was flying IFR, I might select an IFR low chart, and the map is replaced. Similarly with IFR high. Switching between maps is really that easy in ForeFlight. We've included a few additional types of maps that aren't specific to aviation, but that we think you'll find useful. One example is the street map, which shows street names, addresses for the entire planet. Another example is the aerial map, which is a satellite photography map of the whole world. There's one special map in ForeFlight that I'd like to highlight. We call it the ForeFlight Global Aeronautical Map. The Global Aeronautical Map is available to Plus subscribers, Basic Plus, Pro Plus, and Performance Plus. The aeronautical map is special because it's dynamic and data-driven. This means the map is always being re-rendered on the fly right on the device. This allows us to do some really interesting things that make flying with the map a lot more useful. For example, when I'm at a high zoom level, the map shows me big overview information, artsy names and boundaries. But as I zoom into any area, more information fades in. Airspace, airways, nav aids, VORs, frequencies. If I continue to zoom all the way in, the airport diagrams are built in as well. I can zoom into any area on the airport to see where the FBOs are. It's also worth noting that the Global Aeronautical Map is indeed global. It covers the entire planet. It's an IFR high and low map that's meant to get you from A to B anywhere on the planet, so really useful if you're flying internationally with ForeFlight. Another benefit of the dynamic data-driven technology that powers the Global Aeronautical Map is the fact that it's customizable. I can customize the types of information that are on the map and the way the map looks by tapping the Settings button, which is directly to the right of the Layer Selector button at the top of the screen. When I do this, I have a menu, and I can change things. For example, I could change the map theme from dark to light, which re-renders the entire map in a brighter theme that's easier to see in direct sunlight. I can switch from high to low airways. I can even adjust the size of all the text labels by dragging my finger on the text slider and moving it from small to large. The right column of the Layer Selector menu is where we select our map layers. A good example of a common map layer is the radar layer. When I select radar, ForeFlight plots out the current radar returns directly on top of whatever map I've selected. In this case, we can see a couple pieces of crucial information. Obviously, the color represents the reflectivity that was returned, but you can also see lightning strikes, storm tracks, echo tops, and Doppler rotation and hail signatures. The black lines moving across the screen are called storm tracks. These represent where a cell is now and where it is forecast to be at a future time period. The furthermost left dot along that storm track represents where the cell is right now. One dot to the right, where it's forecast to be in 20 minutes, another dot, 40 minutes, another dot, 60 minutes. It's worth noting that many layers in ForeFlight are animatable. Whenever a layer that you're viewing is animatable, you'll see a play button at the bottom of the screen. Next to the play button is a timeline with all of the timestamps that correspond to each of the frames in the available animation. You can tap the play button, and ForeFlight will automatically loop through all available frames. Another example of an animatable layer is the Global Enhanced Satellite. You can select this under the radar option and see infrared and visible satellite in one consolidated layer for the whole planet. AirMets, SIGMETs, and center weather advisories are also available in the ForeFlight layer selector. If you've selected this layer, ForeFlight will automatically render out all of the AirMets, SIGMETs, and center weather advisories that are available, and you can tap on any of them to see the raw information. In this case, I've selected a convective SIGMET. I can see what type it is, I can see when it is active, if it is currently active, what its altitudes are, and the raw text for the product. You can also visualize temporary flight restrictions on the map. If I select the TFR layer, ForeFlight plots out all of the available TFRs on top of the map. Yellow TFRs indicate that the TFR is not currently active, but will be soon. Red TFRs indicate currently active temporary flight restrictions. I can tap on any one of these TFRs to get information about it. I can see the effective date, when it's active, what its altitudes are, and the raw text. ForeFlight also includes stadium TFRs. Although the FAA doesn't publish TFRs for every active stadium, ForeFlight actually looks at all of the stadium schedules all across the country and automatically plots out TFRs when that stadium is going to be active and when a TFR is essentially in effect. You can see the active times, its altitude, and the raw text. Flight category is a very useful layer for seeing surface conditions across the entire planet. When I've selected flight category, ForeFlight plots out METARs all across the world. Green bubbles represent VFR METARs, blue is marginal, red is IFR, and magenta is low IFR. I can tap on any one of these bubbles to see the raw text of the METAR and the translated text. Another very useful feature on the map layer selector is the winds aloft layer. With the ForeFlight winds aloft layer, you can visualize wind speed, direction, and temperature at any altitude at any point on the planet. Once you've selected the winds aloft layer, you can take 2 fingers and pinch to zoom to get a wide view of what wind patterns are doing anywhere in the world. If you pinch to zoom into any area and tap on any wind barb, you can see specifically what the forecast is calling for at that altitude at that point. You can also visualize pilot reports on the map. Tapping on a PIREP displays the timestamp when it was reported, as well as the raw text of the report. There are a variety of other weather layers available in ForeFlight. For more in-depth information on all the layers that are available, I'd encourage you to check out our Power Users course at foreflight.com/videos. Let's talk about flight planning. We don't just look at charts and weather on the ForeFlight map view, we also plan our flights. And we do this using the Flight Plan drawer. I can tap this FPL button at the top of the view, and the drawer is displayed. In the center of the screen, you can see it says tap here to create a route. So let's do that. If we were departing from Oshkosh, I would type KOSH into the box with my keyboard. When I hit spacebar on my keyboard, ForeFlight fills in KOSH with a blue bubble. This bubble tells you that ForeFlight has recognized this as a valid waypoint, and you can confirm this by seeing that KOSH has been plotted for you directly on top of your map. If you wanted to continue planning a route, you would type the next identifier. Let's say we're flying down to Schaumburg, which is 06 Charlie. So I'll type that into my flight plan drawer, and again I'll tap the space bar, and ForeFlight plots a leg from Oshkosh to Schaumburg. If I wanted to head east to Grand Rapids, Michigan, then I would continue typing KGRR for the Grand Rapids Airport, and again space bar, and ForeFlight plots out that second leg for me. In addition to modifying my route by typing waypoints into the flight plan drawer, I can also modify my route by interacting directly with the map. We call this touch planning. For instance, if I didn't want to fly across the lake from Schaumburg to Grand Rapids, and instead I wanted to fly around the lake to an airport south of Lake Michigan, I could actually take my finger and I could tap on the leg that I wanted to modify, and I could drag it to the point that I wanted to stop at. In this case, I'll drag it to Plymouth Municipal Airport, south of Lake Michigan. When I lift my finger up, ForeFlight gives me a list of all of the airports, waypoints, navigation aids that were nearby where I put my finger. In this case, I wanted Plymouth Municipal, so I'll select the airports category and then tap Plymouth Municipal Airport. And you can see ForeFlight automatically fills in the identifier for Plymouth, Charlie 65, on my map. If I go back up to my flight plan drawer, you can see that Charlie 65 has been inserted appropriately between Schaumburg and Grand Rapids. But you can interact directly with the bubbles in your flight plan drawer as well. For instance, if I wanted to move Grand Rapids in my route, I could tap on it and drag it in between Schaumburg and Plymouth, and you can see my route beneath rearranges. So all changes that I make in my flight plan drawer and all changes that I make by interacting directly with my map are synchronized. I can also tap directly on any one of these bubbles to get information about it. In this case, I tapped on the Grand Rapids route bubble, and I'm able to see a variety of different actions. Show on map will center this waypoint for me on my map. Direct to will plot a route directly from my current GPS position to this waypoint. Delete removes it from my route. I can easily insert waypoints before or after this bubble. I can show a specific plate, a procedure for this airport. I can show the airport diagram itself directly by tapping Show Airport Diagram. Or I can tap Show Full Screen. Show Full Screen will take me over to the previous Airports View tab that we were looking at earlier and automatically pull up the Grand Rapids Airport information. At the bottom of the screen is a readout of our performance for this flight, the total distance, time en route, estimated time of arrival once you've entered a time of departure, total fuel burn, and an average head or tailwind component across the entire route. But in order to get good numbers out of ForeFlight, we have to put good numbers into ForeFlight, and we do that by using these three buttons along the left-hand side. The first button is the aircraft selection view. This is where I tell ForeFlight a little bit about the aircraft that I plan to fly for this route. If I tap on the aircraft button, I see a list of all the aircraft that I've already added to the system. If you haven't yet added any aircraft, you can tap the plus button. Once you've done that, ForeFlight provides you a form that you can fill out to provide ForeFlight a little bit more information about the aircraft. There are two very important pieces of information that you need to fill out in this form. The first is the tail number. This is how ForeFlight identifies the aircraft. And the second is the aircraft type code. Once you've entered aircraft information, you then need to provide ForeFlight a little bit of information about the performance of that aircraft, and we do this with the second button. When I tap on this, I'm provided a list of all of the available performance profiles for my aircraft. At the top of the screen are ForeFlight performance profiles. Based on the type code of the aircraft I've entered, ForeFlight will automatically suggest performance profiles for this aircraft. These profiles are only available to ForeFlight Performance Plus customers. If you're not a Performance Plus customer, or just want to provide your own custom performance profile, you can easily do that in the second section. To create a new custom profile, tap the Add Custom Performance Profile button, and ForeFlight will give you a form which allows you to fill out a name for the profile, climb performance numbers, cruise performance numbers, and descent performance numbers. These numbers are what ForeFlight will use to calculate time and fuel burn for this route. It's worth noting that if you don't want to fill out a performance profile and simply want to do some back-of-the-napkin quick calculations, you can always enter a speed directly into the flight plan drawer. For example, if I plan to fly this entire route at 120 knots, I could enter that into my nav log, tap space, and it gets filled in with a bubble. And you can see on the left-hand side where it says My Custom Profile, ForeFlight is assuming 120 knots for this route. Similarly, I can do the same with fuel burn. I could tap 10 gallons per hour, and ForeFlight will then assume 10 gallons per hour for the whole route. That's a quick way to get some really quick numbers on how your aircraft's going to perform on any given route. The last button is the Altitude Advisor. This is where we tell ForeFlight what altitude we plan to fly at. It's also a great way to pick the best altitude for our flight. When I tap on the Altitude Advisor button, ForeFlight presents me this view. Based on the current winds aloft forecast, I can see very quickly what my performance is going to be based on my aircraft's performance information that I've already entered at any altitude. I can filter these altitudes based on VFR or IFR, westerly or easterly, or simply view every altitude. I can quickly select the altitude I want to fly at by tapping a checkbox on the row that the altitude corresponds to, or I can directly enter an altitude at the top where it says 5,500. It's worth noting that we've been entering all of these numbers on the Edit tab of the Flight Plan drawer. There's another tab, the Navlog tab, which gives us per leg information about our route. So once we've entered all of the information for our flight, we can go to the Navlog tab and see what our performance is going to be per leg. There's a whole lot more functionality built into the Flight Plan drawer in ForeFlight Mobile. For more in-depth information on how to use these powerful features, check out our Power Users course at foreflight.com/videos. The next core area of the application is Plates. Plates is the next tab to the right after Maps. When you tap on the Plates tab, you'll see a view that looks like this. At the top of the screen is a drop-down. In ForeFlight, we can organize our plates into virtual binders or folders. To create a new binder, simply tap on the drop-down, and you see a list of all the binders that have already been created. Or you can create a new one by tapping the plus button. Let's say I wanted to plan a flight to Oshkosh. I would tap the plus button and enter a name for my binder. Once I've created a new binder, it's empty because I haven't added any plates to it yet. So I can do that. I'll tap the Add Plate button in my new binder, and I'll enter an airport ID in the search box. In this case, I'll enter KOSH, and ForeFlight gives me a list of all the possible procedures available for KOSH. I'll select the one I want, and it gets added to the binder automatically. I can tap on the plate, and ForeFlight opens it up in full screen, just like it did on the airport's view. At the top of the screen is a big red button that says Tap to view 2 NOTAMs. ForeFlight automatically scans all of the NOTAMs that have been issued for every procedure. If you tap on this button, it'll show you any NOTAMs that are specifically relevant just to the procedure you're looking at. Procedures in ForeFlight can also be annotated by tapping the pencil button in the top left-hand corner of the procedure view when viewing a procedure in full screen. You can annotate procedures using your finger or an Apple Pencil. You can customize the stroke width, color, opacity, add notes with your keyboard, and the annotations are saved automatically on the device. The next core area of the application is Documents. The Documents tab is one to the right of the Plates tab. When you open up the Documents tab, you'll see something that looks like this. It should look familiar. It's designed to mimic the Plates view. I could tap Add Document, and ForeFlight gives me a catalog of all the different types of documents that are available. They're organized by provider. In this case, I'm looking at FAA, and I can see chart supplements, altitude correction tables, NOTAMs, that sort of thing. There's one specific document that I'd like to highlight, and that's under the ForeFlight category. This is the Pilot's Guide to ForeFlight Mobile. The Pilot's Guide is the manual for the application. You can download the manual into the Documents tab in ForeFlight and have it with you when you fly. Whenever there's a large aviation event, for example Oshkosh, the NOTAM for that event is always included under the ForeFlight category. To download a document from the catalog, simply tap the blue Download button, and the document is downloaded and added to your current binder in the Documents view. You can tap on it to open it up in full screen. Similarly to procedures, you can annotate documents as well. You can also search through them or bookmark pages for easy access later. You can swipe left to right to move between pages, or scrub across multiple pages by sliding your finger along the timeline at the bottom of the screen. The next core area in ForeFlight Mobile is our vast library of weather imagery. The Imagery tab is one to the right of the Documents tab along the bottom of the screen. The Imagery tab is divided into two columns. The left column are all the different types of weather imagery that are available, and the right column is each piece of weather imagery that corresponds to that category. I'd encourage you to browse through all the different types of weather imagery that are available. You'll find most of the products that are available on aviationweather.gov, plus a few additional pieces of weather imagery that we included that we think you'll find very useful for flight planning. The next core area of the application allows us to file flight plans, do in-depth route planning, and get weather briefings. We call this the Flights tab. The Flights tab is located one to the right of the Imagery tab along the bottom of the screen. When you first open up the Flights tab, you'll see a view that looks like this. The left column is a list of all of the flights we've created in the past. The right column is a detail view for our currently selected flight. To create a new flight, tap the plus button at the top of the screen, and ForeFlight will enter a new flight into the list. At the top of the screen is a readout of overall performance information for our active flight. You can see it looks very similar to the performance information we were looking at on the Flight Plan drawer on the Maps tab. Distance, time and route, estimated time of arrival, flight fuel, and total headwind or tailwind component across the entire route. We can enter a departure, a destination, an alternate, and estimated time of departure, and we can also enter our aircraft information and our aircraft's performance, as well as our route, similar to what we did on the Maps tab. But there's some powerful features available on the Flights tab that aren't available on the Maps tab. The first is the navlog. When I tap on navlog, ForeFlight generates a full-screen planning navlog that gives me overall information at the top, per leg information in the middle, and then performance aloft information at the bottom. I can also generate a weather briefing from this view. By tapping on the Briefing button, ForeFlight loads the ForeFlight Graphical Briefing. This is the standard briefing you'd expect to find on 1-800-WeatherBrief.com, but organized based on category to make it easier to navigate and visualized. For more information on how to use the ForeFlight Graphical Briefing, check out our graphical briefing video at foreflight.com/videos. Once we've entered all of our flight information, we can tap Proceed to File, and ForeFlight fills all of our flight information into an ICAO form automatically. You can modify the information from here, or if you're happy with it, you can file. File the flight plan by tapping the File button in the bottom right-hand corner. ForeFlight includes a useful tool for taking notes on your iPad when you fly. It's called Scratchpad. The Scratchpad tab is one to the right of the Flights tab along the bottom of the screen. When you first open up the Scratchpad tab, it will look like this. Should look familiar. The layout is similar to the Documents tab and the Plates tab. To create a new Scratchpad, simply tap the New Scratchpad button, and ForeFlight prompts you to select a template. Different templates are meant to accomplish different things. For example, if I simply wanted to draw with my finger or my Apple Pencil, I could select the Draw template, and I could then make notes directly on my screen. There's another useful template that I use all the time, and it's the ATIS template. When I select ATIS, ForeFlight gives me an ATIS view that allows me to very quickly fill in the ATIS for any airport. There's a variety of useful templates in the Scratchpad view, and I'd encourage you to explore each one. I'd like to talk a little bit about downloads. Under the More tab in ForeFlight Mobile, at the top of the screen is the Download section. Before we fly with ForeFlight, we need to make sure we download all of our charts and information onto the device so that we have it with us in flight. We do this by selecting the country that we want data for, and we get a view that looks like this. At the top of the screen is a series of toggles. The toggles tell ForeFlight what types of data we want for this country. So for example, if I was flying VFR, I might toggle on VFR charts and taxi diagrams. If I was flying IFR, I might toggle on IFR planning, high, low, and terminal procedures. Simply select the types of data you want, and underneath, select the areas in the country that you want it for. For the United States, areas are divided by state. For Canada, areas are divided by province. Once you've selected the types of data you want and the areas you want it for, tap the back button at the top of the screen to go back to the main downloads view, and tap the big blue download button at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. ForeFlight will automatically look at the country you selected, the types of data you wanted, and the areas you wanted it for, and download it to your device. There's a whole lot more in ForeFlight Mobile. Synthetic vision is a 3D view of what's outside the window. It shows you color-coded terrain, water features, and airports. Plates on Maps is available to Pro, Pro Plus, and Performance Plus subscribers who have geo-referenced approach plates. This allows you to take a plate and overlay it on top of whatever map to build up different levels of situational awareness as you fly. Weight and balance is included, so you can set up your aircraft's weight and balance, move people or cargo between stations, and see how your CG is going to change. ForeFlight also includes a logbook. Logbook will automatically log the flights for you based on your GPS signal. You can review those flights, modify them, and log them automatically on your iPhone or iPad. All flights in ForeFlight Logbook are backed up automatically to the ForeFlight cloud and synced across all of your devices. ForeFlight also includes a built-in checklist. You can create your own aircraft checklists or start with one of our templates. ForeFlight Glide Advisor is a new feature that takes into account your aircraft's glide performance, its current GPS altitude, and current winds aloft forecast to give you a realistic glide range in the event of an engine-out situation. ForeFlight Procedure Advisor visualizes every procedure into and out of every airport in the world to allow you to very quickly select the correct procedure based on your direction of flight. ForeFlight Terrain Profile shows you terrain and obstacles along your route or ahead of your aircraft in flight. Similarly, Hazard Advisor shows you terrain and obstacles from a top-down view on top of your map. Hazard Advisor is always changing based on your current GPS altitude, and it's recoloring the map based on threat level. Also, you can log into ForeFlight.com with your existing subscription and plan flights, get briefings, generate nav logs, file flight plans directly on your home computer. All the flights you plan on ForeFlight.com sync automatically to your iPad and iPhone. I hope you found this course educational. For a more advanced walkthrough of ForeFlight Mobile, check out our ForeFlight Power Users course at foreflight.com/videos. And you can always get more support resources at foreflight.com/help.